Hi, everybody. Welcome to paragraph 6 of the article that we're reading, Cinderella, the Legend, okay, by Madonna Kolbenschlag. And I just kind of want to talk our way through what she's talking about in this paragraph, okay? And unfortunately, I'm sorry, there is a break in it because this was one page and this was the top of the next page. So there is a definition that appears right in the middle of Deus Ex Machina, which I will explain in a second, okay? So first of all, it starts out talking about, like most fairy tales, the story of Cinderella dramatizes the passage into maturity. Okay, we see that in lots of fairy tales. And once again, fairy tales are a type of folklore, and folklore, as we know, was originally passed down by word of mouth, and then eventually somebody got around to writing them down. That's what was going on with the Grimms with their version, okay? And their versions were all about scaring children into doing the right thing, okay? So that is part of their passage into maturity. And Cinderella is no different. We see her going through a transformation of character, okay? Not just magically, but in other versions where there isn't magic, she also goes through a transformation of character, okay? And it mentions that her sojourn, or her, journey, her travel through this, among the ashes is a period of grieving, a transition to a new self, okay? In many of these versions, they explain that her actual name isn't Cinderella, it was just Ella or Elizabeth or something like that, and the stepsisters added, or the stepmother added cinder to the front of it because she lived among the ashes, okay, where the dirt was, or the ashes from the fireplace and that type of thing. She was covered in it because she was constantly cleaning it. Okay, but that was also a period of grieving because in most of these stories, in basically every recent version of it, she lost her mother. And in many of them, she also lost her father at a certain point. Sometimes he was still there. He was just, as it mentioned earlier, not a very good mentor for her. Okay, and most of these versions with the idea of Cinderella, her mom had passed away, and she is trying to deal with it in some way. She doesn't have that maternal figure to help her. She just has this evil maternal one with the stepmother who is out to just make sure she doesn't surpass her own children, okay? Here it says that in Grimm's version of the tale preserves the sense of process, okay? The idea of going through this transformation, okay? You have to grieve to mature, that type of thing, and it's mentioned later on as well, and it's symbolized in the narrative. Instead of a fairy godmother, like Perrault uses, Cinderella receives, and I'll get to this Deus Ex Machina in a second, Cinderella receives a branch of hazel bush from her father. She puts the twig over her mother's grave. She waters it with her tears and cultivates it with her prayers. And this is how she remains in contact with her past, her roots, her essential self, who she really inside truly is. Okay, she doesn't lose herself as a person when everybody is mistreating her. Okay, she does go through a growth, but she still maintains this connection to her past, all right? And then before one can be transformed, one must grieve for the lost as well as the possible selves as yet unfulfilled, okay? Before you can change yourself, before you can move forward in life, you have to go through the process of understanding loss, okay? Appreciating the fact that, yes, I had this person in my life, I no longer do, and including possible selves. Okay, this is someone who you could have been had this person been a part of your life still and no longer is. Okay, you can grieve for that, and you should, is what they're saying, in order to gain growth, in order to become a new person, okay? And then she tags on this Kierkegaard's existential anguish, okay? And I'm not going to go through all the philosophies of Kierkegaard, but if any of you go off to college, you take a philosophy course, you'll learn all about him. I highly recommend understanding some of it. But in essence, this existential anguish is the fact that Kierkegaard struggled with finding a balance between being a philosopher but also living a life, okay? There has to be a certain balance in there. And basically what's going on here, talking about this is, you have to observe grief and the negative in order to balance the positive, all right? I'm saying that in very basic terms, but that's all you really have to understand about it. Now, to get back to this concept of Deus Ex Machina, okay, in the Perot version, that is something that he certainly introduced, okay? Deus Ex Machina is a Latin phrase that means God from the machine, okay? Or God in the machine, I've heard it called that as well, which is talking about how in literature, if you use that phrase in literature, in something that you read or in plays, maybe in drama, that a character can only go so far and then they're stuck, okay? They couldn't move any further unless there's some kind of magical or divine intervention, okay? And this should remind you, make you think of Cinderella, because the version you might be most familiar with is the Disney version, or which came from this Perot version, in that we know that Cinderella was at home, she's crying. In the Disney version, she had a dress, but it had all been torn, and there's no possible way she was going to go to that ball until there was magical intervention. The fairy godmother came along. Okay, that's not in the Grimm version, that's in the Perot version, all right? So, in essence, a godlike figure came in and helped that character get past that barrier and then move on with the story, okay? That's what they're talking about here. Instead of doing that, which could cause the reader to miss the connection to the past through the character, okay, miss the connection between Cinderella and her mother, because now this fairy godmother replaced the mother figure. In the Grimm version, it was, she planted this twig over the grave, it grew with her tears and prayers and that type of thing, and that's what helped her move forward. Okay? That's what's going on in paragraph 6.